Hi muckers, welcome back to my second channel. How are you doing? Thank you so much for clicking and for being here. Okay, so I am recovering from losing my voice. It is coming and going. I don't actually know how I lost it, but it has probably been one of the worst times I've ever lost my voice because it's like, you know, sometimes it's almost worse if things feel frustrating rather than feeling sore. Sometimes I would much rather have a sore throat than like a throat that I have to keep clearing or whatever because it's frustrating me more than like making me feel sore. Not that that's me asking the universe to give me a sore throat because I'm going to a concert tomorrow, which I'm very excited for. I'm going to Arena Sawayama concert tomorrow. I don't know if people know who that is, but she is an amazing, incredible artist who I discovered on her first album 2 years ago in 2020, and we're going to be talking about 2020 now. And my friend introduced me to her, and she was a really small artist, and she's been growing over the years, and she just released her second album, and it's even more incredible. And I met her in Dublin last year, last November, and I'm meeting her this October. I'm meeting her tomorrow and on Wednesday. Very excited. The concert is tomorrow in Brighton and then on Wednesday in London. So I'm very excited for that, but I'm hoping that my throat kind of clears up. I did do a COVID test because I was like, I don't feel COVID sick, but I have just like so much like body fatigue right now, and I lost my voice, like I said, and I kind of have like a lot of like sinus congestion. So I did do a test, and it was negative, but I don't even have a cold right now. Like I don't feel sick. I feel like my body's kind of going through it right now. And I don't actually know why. For the first time in a long time, normally whenever I get sick, I'm like, oh, it's because of this or it's because of that. I haven't really been going out that much. I have been eating healthy, actually. I don't know if it's just the change in weather, possibly. But yeah, it's not fun. But anyway, I'm very excited for that tomorrow. Sorry for the disgustingness in me, but I haven't been able to film for the past like 3 days because it's been so bad, and I've just wanted to talk about so many things. And one of those things was that I was thinking about 2020, right? I also have a tea right here, but I just made it, so it's gonna be way too hot to drink it. I was thinking about 2020, and these are the kind of conversations I have with my friends, and I definitely just enjoy having them with you so much. And I know I've been hyping on about the Facebook group that we have, but it's really good because it's kind of like an even deeper connection than, you know, comment sections because people are really opening up because they feel really that they can because it's such a private group. I'm trying to clear my nose. Hold on. It's like only like buildup of like sinus at this stage. I wish I had my like American stuff, like my medication, because it was really good for sinus, but it did knock me out. So anyway, I was talking to them about 2020, and again, these are things that I like talking to my friends about, and I like hearing their opinions. So I would love to hear yours. But it was that it's crazy that we went through so much individually, as you know, family, friends, extended, circle of people, cities, countries, world. We went through so much. End of 2019, 2020 with the pandemic, 2021 with the pandemic, and then it was near the end of 2021 that we started getting vaccines and we started getting testing numbers were starting to get under control so people could get tested if they wanted. And it was only around that, and even still we're still living with it. So we're now in 2022, and it was crazy to me because I was like, it was one of my friend's birthdays, and I was having a conversation with him, and I said, isn't it crazy that like you and I and everybody have had like 3 birthdays under COVID now, and our lives were definitely put on pause. And by the way, this conversation is going to be a very much so privileged conversation that mine and my family and my friends, we didn't lose anyone to COVID in my circle. And again, I'm having this conversation from it. That's a privilege. because a lot of people can't say that. So I do want to be sensitive with this conversation. I do want to let you know that I'm kind of speaking about this in less so that and more so emotionally how the pandemic changed all of us. So please don't think that I'm not aware of how this conversation comes across. I don't mean for it to, but I want to be sensitive to the fact that everyone's situations coming out of the pandemic is incredibly different, and I feel that as long as my family and friends, everyone was safe, everyone was healthy, I don't think that I could ever speak from how the pandemic really affected me, because I was actually one of the lucky ones that, you know what I mean? Like, I got COVID, I got sick, I had long COVID, and I moved on from it. Then I got COVID again, then I felt fine, then I got COVID again, and I definitely have some sort of long-term body sickness ever since having it so many fucking times. And that is like the worst of my experience with COVID, and that's a privilege to be able to say that, because so many people lost their family and friends. So many people were being forced into unsafe environments at the peak of it, because their workplace weren't accommodating, or they didn't give a shit, and they were then having to put themselves in danger for the sake of making money, which was so needed during a time when everyone was struggling with money, and still is with the living crisis right now. And so the conversation I want to have was, I said to my friends, don't you feel that nobody talks about the fact that we literally took a 3-year, basically emotional and mental and everything pause? Like, so much happened within that 3 years, so it wasn't a pause. But I'm going to ask you, like, how different or not different? I very much so doubt that anyone is going to comment and say not different. Your life is now compared to what it was before the pandemic. And the emotional thing in this is that I'm sure 90% of you will say that your life is completely different now. But if we think about COVID, for a lot of people, it feels like you almost can't put a time and place on the entire thing, because the 3 years were almost as if it was like one long, huge day. And at least it does for me. So it's kind of like, how the fuck can your life change so much? Being like, oh, I hear people being pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. And I'm like, when I hear people talk about that, they almost speak about it as if it was like, oh, like a month ago. Like, we're now dealing with like 2019 versus 2022. And I just don't think that we talk about it enough, that we all went through a pandemic together. And that, what happened? Like, is it not so crazy to you? Okay, so I'll speak about me, because I don't want to like assume on people. So I'm gonna say it's crazy to me that sometimes I'll just be walking around the supermarket and be like, wow, I can't put a number on how long ago it was, because it all feels like such a blur to me, like a long blur, and then a short blur, and then an even longer blur. It's like the times where I had to queue outside of the supermarket, and everyone had to queue outside of the supermarket, so that there could be 5 people in the shop at one time, and then when you were in the shop, like, you were so covered over and da-da-da-da-da. And look at me walking around the shop now. I don't have a mask on. Being on a plane. Now, I like wearing my mask, so when I go on a plane, I wish it was always a thing. I wish everyone had to. But it was absolutely crazy to me whenever I was going on planes in the past few months, and nobody was even wearing a mask. And I was like, oh my God, for so long, that was the standard, and how did it go on for so long, and then like one day just feel like it was over? And COVID is not over. People are still dealing with this day in, day out. But what I'm saying is, like, it just kind of was like such a huge part of our lives for so long, the protocols, the whatever, and then one day, after the longest period ever, it just felt like everyone just kind of went, oh. And that's weird, because everyone struggled during the pandemic at one time or the other. So many people went through so many huge life changes within the pandemic, and it's like, I think that because we associate the past 3 years with the pandemic, nobody talks about the last 3 years, ever. Which is so unnatural, because oh my God, 3 years ago, a lot of people would talk about, oh my God, how different their life has changed within the past year, going from 2019 to 2018. Or being like, whenever it was 2019, on New Year's Eve, being like, oh my God, do you remember like 3 years ago, all this happened within this time or whatever like that? That's such a normal thing to do. And so the fact that a lot of us just don't reference what has happened in the last 3 years is so crazy, because in no other context would you do that. But also, in any other context, the last 3 years wouldn't have been as traumatizing as what they were. It's so crazy to me, and it's like, I wonder if you have that feeling too, where it's like, because I was traveling, I was, getting all my tests done, I was making sure I had my vaccine, I had the proper mask, I was, making sure what the regulations were in certain countries and blah, 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 blah. And then one day, whenever I went on a trip, it was like, you don't even have to prove that you're vaccinated. And I'm like, how did we, go from dun 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 so quickly, but like the last 3 years, and it was like, when did it stop? Like, when did people, so it, does anyone else just feel like that? So again, this conversation started because I said to my friend, do you feel said age, or do you feel like you're celebrating your birthday 3 years ago and you're celebrating that age? Because for a lot of people out there, they have lost the last 3 years of their lives. They have. And so much irreversible damage was done within the last 3 years. So that's a whole conversation. And then another conversation is the fact that, again, nobody talks about the last 3 years. And just speaking on the year by year by year, that would never happen in any other, it really does keep me up at night thinking about this kind of stuff, because I am it was so unnatural what happened. We were, for sometimes, trapped to our bedrooms. It was going into a shop and there's nothing on any of the shelves, or going and there's a toilet paper shortage, or just so many unnatural things that we haven't really experienced as a worldwide all at once thing ever before. And just the the amount of people that dropped out of college or dropped out of school or moved workplace or changed career paths because of the last 3 years is an incredible number. And I'm one of them. I dropped out of college. I got my qualifications though, because my college were so bad, and I graduated me early. Thank y'all for that. Which is so funny to me, because I didn't graduate. I did not hand in the work to graduate, but my college made an error in their computer systems and graduated all of us 6 months early and sent out the certificates and the emails, and I just never returned mine. So I have it on paper that I graduated. And if my school were ever, or my college were ever to call me out on that, then they would be in huge legal trouble, because they graduated everyone super early, or they gave out the qualifications or whatever. So I just didn't return mine, didn't finish the year, I still graduated. But I did drop out. And I dropped out because it got too much during the pandemic. I would not have dropped out of college if the pandemic had not happened. I couldn't do online classes. And then that's a whole other thing. Isn't it so crazy to us that that was so normal? Online classes and it's just so much happened and no one talks about it. And I understand why people don't want to talk about it, because it's kind of it really was so traumatizing that when you really think about it, losing family members, not being able to see family members, feeling disconnected, people not being able to fly to see their loved ones. But I understand that people don't want to talk about it because it was such a bad period of time. So bringing it up again is kind of, but that's 3 years. And I get it completely, but it's so unnatural to not talk about 3 years of time. And not only just that, but how those years really changed people's perspective, changed people's lives, And it's really a very normal thing to not even reference them in the slightest. And again, I'm being so sensitive to the fact that I understand completely why people do not want to talk about them. But I'm just saying that as humans and how we are built, that is so unnatural. And I think that a lot of people are experiencing long-term trauma because of that as well. I'm sure a lot of people. I really want to know what your opinion is, like, thinking back on the last 3 years. For me, it was, I wouldn't have moved country if it wasn't for the pandemic. I realized that I like my own space and that I need it if I'm going to work. Like at an at-home job, I can't do it when other people are around. I learned that I can't do online college. It got too much for me. I realized that I suck with learning whenever I'm not face-to-face with someone. And I'm not going to get into other things, but like, it really was. And I mean, friendships ended because of the pandemic, because, you know, it really challenged people. Relationships ended because of the pandemic. And it's like, we all really experienced the unthinkable. And if you had ever brought up the word pandemic to me before, I would have not known what it meant ever. And is that a privilege as well? Absolutely. And it's just really crazy. And it's almost hard to imagine that was like deemed as normal. Like, it was normal for us to be legally only allowed to leave the house for 5 to 10 minutes a day. In the UK, that was a rule, or maybe it was like 30 minutes, but it was no longer. It was a legal rule that if you were leaving the house and someone spotted you outside of the house twice, you would be fined and you could be arrested. And it like, that was the norm. And I could walk outside my apartment now and fucking do a dance in the rain and walk back in. But at a certain period of time, I couldn't have done that twice in one day. And it just is so crazy to me as well, thinking about that I'm someone who, especially when I was living home, really depended on seeing my nana and granda. It kept me in a routine. It kept me feeling connected to them. It was almost like a reset in a way for me as well, and I really needed it whenever. So if I was dealing with friendship drama or college drama, seeing them was kind of like they really did like humble me. Whenever it was very humbling to like spend an afternoon with my nana and granda, and that stopped for like 2 years, and it's like I was living in, and I'm sure a lot of us were as well. And for a lot of people, it was like a completely justified thing, because unfortunately a lot of people lost their grandparents and a lot of people lost their parents. And it's like, every single day I was waking up nervous about when my nana or granda would go out to the shopping center, because they would be, you know, they might see 5 people, and like, that's the scary thought, because what if those 5 people are sick and get them sick? And it's like, there was just so much pressure on each individual person during that time. And I really do like want to ask you, like, how do you feel being on the other side of it? And I know that we're not on the other side of it completely, but I'm just saying, like, how do you feel? And how do you feel looking back on the last 3 years? Do you talk to people about it? Do you not? I try to get my friends to talk about it, and rightly so, understandably, it makes a lot of them very uncomfortable and they don't want to talk about it. And I completely get that too. But it's just something I really want to talk about with people, because it's something that no one would have predicted. Everyone's life has changed. It's something where everyone has a story about it. Like, everyone was changed or altered in a bit because of it. So I want to know your experience during it, before it, and after it. Like, I really would. If you feel comfortable, I would love to know what your take is on it. But it's just so crazy to me. And I remember celebrating birthday, you know, during COVID, and talking with my friends during COVID on like Skype and Zoom, and it's almost really crazy to think about it now. I just really would love to know where you're at with it, because a lot of people don't talk about it, and maybe a lot of people out there need to talk about it. So I would appreciate any sort of opinions on this, because it really is something that I think about all the time. And it's crazy. It really is. So anyway, this is kind of like an insight into like my, what time of the night? It's actually not that late. I was going to say late night thoughts, but this is only 11 p.m. I really would love to know your opinion on this. Oh, my mom texted me good night. Love you. Good night. So yeah, please let me know. I am very excited because I have this concert tomorrow. But once I read people's comments, I'm definitely going to make like a part 2 to this video. I just wanted to kind of scratch the surface, and then we'll get more into it. But I love you, and thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon, and bye. Mwah.